Hey, welcome to Bonehead. This week's episode is Del Toro films, the ones that he made and the ones that he
didn't make,
which he's almost more famous for. Guillermo del Toro is who? Guillermo del Toro?
Famous director, writer, producer, actor, video game, avatar.
Also, his name means of the bull.
Isn't he in a video game?
There's actually an entire thing. He actually, and I'm going to
Oh, no, let's not get to it yet.
Okay. Do we need credits anywhere in here?
Roll the credits.
Why did I automatically
Am
go
I
to the
allowed to
hustle?
drink during the credits?
Are you allowed to drink anytime?
Nope.
No.
All right. Anyway, back.
It's all
Grabby. The credits are now over. Magic time. Haley, cut in. Hi, Haley. Haley's not waving back. She's holding the camera. So anyway, we're talking about Del Toro. Guillermo del Toro just won what?
An Oscar.
Golden Globes.
An Oscar. Yeah, Golden Globe. That's the really prestigious one.
He hasn't got the EGOT yet.
No, that's true. He's
Or
not a
the
Ghostbusters fan.
Or the EGOT. Spikes.
Oh, that's true. Does he have an Emmy?
Nah, I don't know.
No.
If I've learned anything from The Simpsons, if anybody gives you an Emmy, you have to give it away as soon as possible.
So
Coming soon, though, he's doing a Netflix show.
He made a movie about a guy who's a fish man who has sex with a deaf woman.
Who
won an Oscar for that.
who adopts a stuffed teddy
Let
bear.
me check real quick. Is that the exact definition on the back of the case? Son of a gun, it is.
Pretty much. That's what got him his Oscar. Not Pan's Labyrinth, not a modern day classic.
No.
Actually, I will argue with Brandon Griffith. We had this argument on an episode of the Scarefest Radio, but I defend The Shape of Water. It's a very good film. I don't know that it's his best film.
And it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
It's an amazing film. It's not his best film.
No.
You know, though, you have to also give him credit for, and one thing I do want to say is of also bringing attention to different types of films as a producer.
Absolutely.
As a producer as well as a director. Cause,
and we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
So, do you want to start out with stuff he's done? Do you want to start out?
I mean, that would be the shorter part, wouldn't it?
No, I just want to talk about our favorite cheese, Brie.
It's not Brie. Brie sucks.
Brie is ugh.
Brie is too
French.
soft. Is it too?
Hey,
is it too warm in here for Brie?
Don't spend too much time talking about Brie.
Larson.
When you're talking about Brie, you want to be brief.
Why are you always up in his?
Could you explain to me that joke he just did?
I mean, no, because it wasn't very funny.
I was gonna do it. I was gonna do an Allison Brie. I did a Brie Larson.
You know what?
Allison Brie. Those are two different people, right?
Yes, Allison Brie is on Community. She was on Community, and Brie Larson is Captain Marvel. She was also in that movie about that room
with King Kong.
Yeah.
She was with that movie King Kong,
and where King Kong was in that room.
And they had her. King Kong had her locked up in that room.
Chad, you know what? There's something about cheese you need to know.
What?
Some of it is Gouda.
Oh, God.
It's good of me, it's good of you. So, anyway, Del Toro is a famous filmmaker, and we're huge fans, and we will probably tag him in Twitter later on this, and he will totally ignore us.
Yeah.
But, never let it be said that we didn't try. His first film is...
Chronos.
The Hands of Fate.
The Vampire Hunter. Chronos the Vampire Hunter. Look it up. It has nothing to do with Del Toro, but it's a fun movie.
We probably should have done that one. It's for movies that you've never seen. All right, so Chronos. Chronos is a film about vampires. He's visited vampires more than once, a couple of times. In fact, he wrote 3 novels about the strain. Mm-hmm. But Chronos is about a elderly gentleman who's a grandfather who discovers the Chronos device, and it basically makes him into kind of a different kind of vampire, where it works on you, but you eventually have a thirst for blood. Yeah. And it makes him younger, right? Mm-hmm. And it really isn't about vampires. It's about the relationship with him and his grandson.
That's exactly what it is.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes it beautiful. With like most great Del Toro films,
the monster element is kind of like the subplot. It's not the main plot.
It's not the main plot. And I don't know, and if you listen to because we'll get to Crimson Peak in a few minutes though, but he's not usually really, plot isn't his number one thing. Plot is usually secondary to other things like art direction, and he talks about this in Crimson Peak.
Well, and all of his movies, whether you love them or not, and we've talked about this with other directors, like whether you love Rob Zombie films or not, but when you see a Rob Zombie film, it's a Rob
I
Zombie
you know
film.
it's a Rob Zombie film.
And I would say Del Toro is the same way in that I've never seen a Del Toro film where I haven't been like, there was something beautiful about it.
Yeah.
Budget high, budget low, but there's always something where you're like, yeah, that just looked cool.
The next one is Mimic, correct?
Well, what about Devil's Backbone?
Devil's Backbone came after Mimic.
Ooh, okay.
Devil's Backbone. So he went to work in Hollywood. Chronos kind of put him on the map as an independent filmmaker at a time when you could do that. That's no longer a possibility, really, any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But he got to work for Dimension Films. Now, who ran Dimension Films? Miramax.
Oh, Harvey Weinstein.
The Weinsteins. Now, what is the Weinstein? What is particularly famous? What is Harvey Weinstein famous for?
Discovering Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, not rape at all.
I was trying to be more positive, but you're right. He's a
despicable scumbag
Who just got arrested.
who just got arrested. And we're as
Let's
farthest
not-
removed from Hollywood as you can get. And we knew that Harvey was a diva. I didn't know about the rape, but I knew about him
I was
being a
gonna say,
horrible
well,
human
also,
being.
too,
not
he,
only just the rape, it's just the... and by the way, the rape is the absolute worst.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Norm MacDonald.
But...
The hypocrisy was the worst.
well, but
No, I
anyway.
think it was the rape.
But
We're getting off the...
his damage to potted plants, if you know that story, I mean, that's not necessarily rape. That's just flipping weird.
Weird, I agree. So
Like,
we're getting off...
and nobody can get away with that. I don't care who you are.
Captain Planet's in the corner
So-
crying, taking a cold shower.
At this time, if you get a chance, is Mimic up there? I can't see. Yes, okay. So if you get a chance to pick up the special edition, or you come over to my basement and pay me $100, and I'll sit and explain it to you, and we'll watch the movie together.
It's actually my least favorite Del Toro film.
I love scenes in it, though. I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I thought this was, a flawed movie, but beautiful. And from someone who with a distinct voice.
The first time I saw Mimic, scenes from Mimic, I didn't see it all this way, but was actually in a biology class.
There you go.
The biology teacher was making the comment about adaptation and blah blah blah, and just used certain scenes from that movie about how certain things could be adapted and certain life forms can adapt in certain ways, but there's still certain solid elements that we can't adapt around, using the feet, for example.
So Mimic, he talks about it if you watch the special edition. He never really got his director's cut till years later. That's the director's cut as much as can be assembled. They tried to fire him a couple of times. Mira Sorvino, who was the star of the film, had to stand up for him and say, no, if you fire him, I'll walk. They never really got their vision together. He was 34 years old, and he talks about being crucified, being how 34, if you're a religious person, is it's a fine time to get crucified. Other famous people have done it at 34 years old.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sorry. We've got talking behind the camera. You guys got something to add? No. Okay, I'm sorry. You were just talking. So, anyway, Mimic. Check it out. Robert Rodriguez is one of the several other filmmakers that worked on this.
Yeah.
Who did Second Unit, ended up reshooting stuff on that because they were all working for the Weinsteins. It was Robert Rodriguez, and there was another famous filmmaker who reshot stuff on this. A couple of the shots in the director's cut are Robert Rodriguez's. He'll point them out. There wasn't any kind of animosity between Del Toro and Rodriguez as far as I know. In fact, they were friends. It's just they were, Rodriguez had a job to do.
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
getting paid to do it. So we finally got his director's cut out of this at least 15, almost 20 years later. And check it out. It's an interesting movie. It's still flawed. Is it a great film? No. It has an interesting concept. It has a wonderful, wonderful performance from a great character actor named Charles S. Dutton.
From Rock.
From Rock, who was famous for that. And he's also the best part of Alien 3.
Yes. Charles S. Dutton is an underappreciated character actor.
Who
Charles S.
doesn't
Dutton,
get it.
by the way, and credit, you mentioned Rock, but Rock also for a long time was live.
Yes.
The last
the last couple seasons, yeah.
They did it live, which is,
I didn't know that.
for a
Yeah.
sitcom to be live.
So when we're getting off Del
We're getting
Toro
off
again,
Del Toro.
but Rock,
But-
they did a couple of specials in the early seasons where he was live, and it was so successful that we'll just make the whole show live, and that's how the last one or two seasons went.
So that's just, off Del Toro, but you have to give
Yeah, Charles
an
S.
actor credit.
There are other good actors in that movie. I just always remember Charles Dutton.
Charles
Dutton as the
Dutton.
cop. The next one is The Devil's Backbone.
Such a good movie.
It is. It takes place in Spain after World War II.
Right,
correct? And who's the dictator? I keep wanting to say Franco Nero, Spain. It's not. It's
I
not.
want to say Mussolini, and it's not Mussolini.
By the way, I would
It's,
watch Franco Nero's Spain right now.
In a boys' school. Is it a Jesuit school? All boys' school.
It's an all-boys school, yeah. It's like an orphanage.
It's like an orphanage. And there's a dead ghost from a dead boy. And there's an unexploded bomb out in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, it's not about the ghost.
No.
It's about dealing and coming of age at that time in a horrible situation with horrible people.
Yes.
Unexploded bombs are movie tropes all of their own. You can find those throughout, especially movies that focus on certain time periods. There's one in Bed Knobs and Broomsticks. There's one in...
There's a MASH episode.
No, I haven't seen... I couldn't tell you the plot of it.
Who's the actor that played the father of Mary Poppins and plays
Christopher
the professor?
Plummer? No.
No.
That's Sound of Music.
You're thinking of that one movie.
Anyway, he gets his mansion because he doesn't care that there's an unexploded bomb in front of it, so he just moves in.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, no, I think it's probably one that a lot of people that and Chronos haven't seen.
Right.
Yeah.
Should we keep going? That was loud. Sorry about that. Anyway, I have to keep my notes over here.
I think that was on your computer.
It was on the computer and it was over both updating. It was my Outlook. The next one after that, I think, is Blade 2.
Yeah.
Probably his most commercially successful.
One of his
recently.
most.
I mean, of
out of all of
it's
them,
the one that put him on the map to continue on doing what.
Yeah, and why did he do Blade 2? Do you guys know?
So he could do Hellboy.
So he could do Hellboy. That was it.
Yep.
Couldn't get Hellboy off the ground. And he'd always wanted to do Hellboy, and he did Blade 2 for that. And
There's a great documentary called American Nightmare where he actually goes into that.
Of why you would do it, too.
Yeah, why he did Blade 2.
Blade 2 is probably his most commercially fun film. I enjoyed it a lot. Chad?
Yep. I enjoy it.
It's by all... there is no argument here. Anybody who says that's not the best out of the Blade films, I just want to smack the crap out of them.
Are you including Blade House of Cthulhu? What is it called?
What the hell are you
You
talking
don't
about?
remember that? The TV movie that they did.
I never saw it.
That was
spun off into
the
the
TV show.
series.
Yeah, no, I didn't know.
Because you now get the 4-pack and it includes that one.
Never saw it.
I saw it when it first aired.
Never saw
Any
it.
good?
I don't remember anything about it.
Anyway, go out, check out Blade 2. I'm assuming most of you have. It's written by David Goyer. It has some great lines. It also
Who went
has
on to
some
direct Blade Trinity, the third
which is
film,
a terrible movie.
which is a terrible movie that stars Ryan Reynolds as a comic book hero.
Which is
What?
just
It was a
stupid
heck.
idea.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds.
By the way,
playing
Ryan Reynolds is the only redeemable part of that whole film.
Yeah.
Right? What else?
Triple H.
Ryan Reynolds is the only redeemable part of that whole
Unless
movie.
Triple H
Hunter-
wants to come on the show and defend
I don't even
himself.
like the first Blade.
Hunter
You all always
Hearst Helmsley.
defend it.
I like the first Blade.
We had, if you remember, if you watch the show a lot, go back and watch a Mixtron episode
If it
talking about
wasn't-
Stephen Norrington
and
working
if-
on their first Blade.
For better or for worse, I say for better, even though it's getting kind of exhausting. If we didn't have the Blade movie, it's one of the catalysts to giving us the current plethora of comic book movies
films.
that we have.
That's true. That's
So-
true. What's next? Hellboy? Yes.
Yes.
Hellboy is next.
Why do you even ask if you know the answer?
I don't know. I'm just making sure it's Hellboy.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I thought you had research.
I have all the other ones. I thought you all got them in order.
No.
What are we doing here?
I don't even
I'm
know.
walking out.
I thought we
Bye.
were focusing on the stuff that he talked about and never made. That's what I
thought
got.
that's what I got too, but he said we wanted to talk about the other ones. So
I
Blade-
never said that.
Yes, you did. You even said it in the text saying I thought we were going to talk about the ones that he did.
I want to look at this text first.
Who the always bringing up his phone? For those of you in iPod land,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes,
iTunes.
that's okay.
James,
so
let him
anyway,
talk.
he made Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2.
And those are
You want to talk about them for a second?
the Hellboy films are. I mean, they're
I said look through a list.
Hellboy is not an epically well-known superhero as compared to a lot of what we see.
Yeah.
I mean, he is not Superman. But if you are a comic fan, you're at least vaguely aware of Hellboy, published by Dark Horse.
Yep.
Created by Mike Mignola. When they first met to talk about who they were going to cast,
They both said Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman was who they both wanted, which worked out phenomenally well. The thing about Hellboy, and there's a spin-off in his own right, Hellboy is the anchor of a universe because there's the BRPD, there's all these other characters now that inhabit that universe that have had their own series or limited series. But what makes Hellboy interesting is, much like several other characters that I love in comic books, Hellboy gets the living crap kicked out of him more often than not.
Hellboy is the blue collar, right?
Yeah.
Superhero.
Right.
Who loves cats?
Who loves cats? I mean, obviously, it's a Del Toro. Most of his fetishes are probably Del Toro's fetishes, right? So watch the movie, and that usually tells you what you want to know about the director.
Yeah.
I mean, he's obsessed with cats, eats a lot, is kind of a romantic.
Mm-hmm.
He's
In
very
his
much a
own
romantic.
way.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a lot of love for bureaucracy
or authority. Yeah.
Which we'll be getting into
the structured system.
after we get through this list.
So that would bring us to Pan's Labyrinth, which is his best film.
Bar none. Pan's Labyrinth, best film.
Pan's Labyrinth, you can mute, watch it in the original language without subtitles, and it's still compelling.
And it's still gut-wrenching, too.
It's still gut-wrenching.
Because anybody who doesn't get to the end of that movie and have a tear coming out of their eye has no soul.
It's close. I honestly, because it's bittersweet, and if you're watching this and you've never seen it, I don't want to give too much away.
No spoilers.
But I mean, it's tragic, and she gets what she wants all at the same time. But
then there's an argument that because it's open for interpretation.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
To me, it's a tragedy where she gets kind of what she wants into.
I think though.
I
think, and by the way, one thing we have to mention,
beautiful.
We have to mention throughout all of this, Doug Jones.
Doug Jones and Ron Perlman are the recurring people in all these. Yes.
And Doug Jones, if you've ever met him, is a stupendously nice human being, who I thought we were doing a dance number, practices mime, does all this stuff. But I have to bring that up for Pan's Labyrinth because the characters that he plays in there, particularly the one that he's best known for in there,
the fawn or the Pan.
No, I'm actually talking about
the melting man.
Yeah, the melting man.
To me, that's
the one.
I would say that out of all the characters,
I'll be honest. It's called Pan's Labyrinth. But if you ask me for the one scene that I constantly go back to in that film, it is where she has to go into that room.
I mean, it's a great
I watch that scene and it pulls me in. If I'm just channel surfing and it's anywhere near that scene, I don't go back and get a DVD copy of it. I've got one, but I will stop, watch that scene, and go, "Oh, I'll watch it on DVD later." But I will stop for that scene every time. There's something about that, and Doug Jones, to his credit, and why Del Toro, I think, continues to work with him, rightfully so, is Doug Jones can have a role where he doesn't speak at all, and it's his movement, and it's his reactions, the way even his head moves, that tells that story.
He's a great mime.
Yeah.
On top of everything else. Go out and check out his mime book, by the way. If he's at a con, he'll sign it for you, give you a hug. He's one of the... James is right. Chad and I have had we could tell you stories about him jumping up in Chad's arms, my arms. He's just a wonderful human being.
And if you're not into Del Toro type stories, you can also catch him in Star Trek. He has a reoccurring role in Star Trek now as Saru. Yeah. Which is a fascinating character in its own right too.
There's Crimson Peak and there's Pacific Rim, two flawed films.
Yeah, I would
Crimson
agree.
Peak is beautiful. Pacific Rim, the criticism I rail at is what the criticism Stephen King said of The Shining, the Kubrick one. It's a beautiful car with a shitty engine.
Yeah.
I agree that Pacific Rim's a beautiful car with a Top Gun plot.
I've got a question about that. Between the two, which one do you favor?
Crimson Peak.
Ooh, Pacific Rim.
I love the scene. If you ask me which one's probably to turn my mind off to watch, he's right, Pacific Rim. But if you ask me which is the superior film, it's obviously Crimson Peak.
I caught Crimson Peak late because my kids were young. I didn't get a chance to catch it in theaters. I actually like Crimson Peak.
The problem is it's not a horror film. It was marketed as a horror film. It's called a gothic romance, but a lot of this stuff for me when I first watched it, I was like, I mean, it's beautiful. And then when I watched the commentary of him explaining it to me of how this is a type of film, it's called a gothic romance. It was called gothic romantic literature. The turn of the century. This is the kind of movie he was making. It's kind of that story. There just happened to be ghosts in it, right? Because there's always ghosts and monsters and all that.
Yeah, but a robot picks up a ship.
Are we? You're arguing the other part.
Bat.
Yeah, I agree. It's fantastic.
I
But
don't
it's
care
the
about
plot
Tom
that's not
Hiddleston and.
But I saw it the first time when it was called Robot Jocks.
Or
You
Top
shut your
Gun.
mouth about Robot Jocks. Pacific Rim.
Stuart Gordon, you come on as a show.
Oh yeah,
anytime you
Stuart
want.
Gordon. Robot Jocks is fantastic. Not as good as Pacific Rim. Still good.
Yeah, you come
Whatever.
on.
No,
Stuart.
and I think that's the thing. I think that's the thing that I will give Crimson Peak, and
It's
why
a superior film.
why
It
Pacific
is
Rim.
not.
Hold on, let me finish my thought.
No.
Pacific Rim is something that I've seen before but done well.
Mm-hmm.
Crimson Peak, I haven't seen anything like that probably since the movies, maybe a couple in the 70s got near it.
There are
Crimson
some silent
Peak is
films
beautiful.
and some earlier films.
It's really beautiful. It's predictable as hell.
Well, yeah.
Pacific Rim is
It's not
a
predictable as hell?
giant robot holding a ship and hitting a monster with it.
Yeah, it's a great scene, Chad. Nobody's arguing with you. For dumb entertainment, it is great.
And that's what I
Now,
need.
Crimson Peak
But
is
in
a
all
superior
fairness,
film.
are you
No.
also going to defend Transformers for being dumb entertainment?
No, Transformers is not dumb entertainment. It's just dumb.
I guess I shouldn't call Crimson. I really I will. Transformers is dumb entertainment. I
No,
will say
it's dumb.
Pacific Rim
But you
is.
say Crimson Peak, you can see
It's
everything
not dumb
coming
entertainment.
ahead.
It is pop. It is light. It's the Diet Coke of entertainment.
See,
I'm trying to get away with
the
putting
problem,
it out
and this
there.
is one thing that's
There's
amazing.
nothing of
You're the
substance.
Diet
And this
Coke
is
of evil,
one thing
just
about,
one calorie,
and
not
again, this
evil.
is something that Guillermo del Toro should get credit for. He can make two completely different films and have this argument because Pacific Rim is just cut off your mind, action entertainment,
Done very well.
done very well.
Just a
Still
terrible plot.
beautiful, terrible plot. Crimson Peak, beautiful film. Just a predictable
I really
plot.
No, but
think
see,
I
to me,
really think you'd
Pacific
enjoy it
Rim-
more if you'd listen to if you'd have him walk you through it and then
Yeah.
rewatch it. It's different.
Okay.
I loved it the first time I saw it.
And I
That
still-
being said, Pacific Rim, though, when you critique Crimson Peak for being predictable, the fact that 10 minutes into it, I could honestly just predict, okay, something's going to happen to the new bots,
And
and
that's-
it's going to be, old Annie's still built on
It sounds like I'm slamming Crimson Peak. I'm not. I actually really enjoy Crimson Peak. I just and if you're comparing the two,
I'll tell
Oh,
you
no, it
why
is-
Crimson Peak wins, and I'll take Del Toro out of the equation.
Jessica Chastain.
No, the acting. Although Jessica Chastain is a good actress. No, the acting. Charlie
Yeah.
Hunan or whatever he is, I swear to God, him and his smell of fart acting.
Yeah,
This
that's-
is not gravitas.
and that's
Someone
one
just
movie.
cut one.
And the
I
other
smell one. It's the same thing with Jared Paddle, as James
Jared
calls him,
Padalecki.
Jared Paddleduck from
That's
Supernatural.
Yeah,
This isn't gravitas. You just smelled a fart.
I just look good. But no.
Oh, he's hot. Yeah,
the other
it's
thing
not
I'll
my
say.
type,
The other
you
thing
know.
I'll say about
The
Pacific
whole
Rim
balls
too.
thing kind of ruins
In
it.
turn, I felt like Idris Elba was not used correctly. Because Idris Elba is a fantastic actor.
I could say the same
You
thing
know who did
probably
use him
about
correctly?
Thor.
You know who did use him correctly? Let me make this 10 times worse. You ever seen them Ghost Rider pictures?
Oh my god.
He does a better job in the Ghost Rider movie. You
Watch
agree?
it again.
Yeah,
It's
he's the
literally-
best part, probably.
Oh, he is
Watch
the best
it.
part. But that
Watch it
movie's
again, and I will argue that some of the best we've got out of both him and in comic book films, and oddly enough, Christopher Lambert in the
Yeah,
past decade.
I agree. He's right. He's
Yeah.
absolutely right. It's not a good movie, but he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
That is now that to me.
And the sequel's better than the original.
Oh yeah, that to me is turn your mind off entertainment.
Yeah.
Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance.
I mean, it has a
Man.
scene with him, the kid imagining Ghost Rider pissing
I'm telling
fire.
you, he made the Dark Tower. I mean, it was just fantastic from beginning to end.
Haley,
Haley
what do you
gave me
think
the
about
look
that
of death.
statement?
Kind of want to throw this camera at him.
I saw that look.
Is that my camera?
No, that's
Nope.
my camera.
Good, then
It's
throw the
his.
shit at him. Hurl it at him, hurl it at his
Hold on,
face.
let's
how's good your aim? Do I need to link?
Oh,
let's
how
finish
good
this.
is your aim?
Let's finish this up so we can talk about the movies that we want to see made.
Yeah, okay, so
Bruce
we're
Lambert.
after that he won for an Oscar for The Shape of Water.
Which
It was
we've
well
already
deserved.
discussed.
It is well deserved for everything. And we're not even getting into producing things, so I'm going to go through these. I have to give.
Is this the list of movies that didn't get made?
This is a list of movies that didn't get made, and we're going to go through them one at a time. Now, as always, give credit, as our friend Harlan Ellison has said. Always, he's
Give
be a
credit to the
mensch.
writer.
Give credit to the writer. This is from FilmSchoolRejects.com.
I've got some that aren't on that list. So.
Thank you, Film School Rejects. There's 45 movies on here. Do you want me to hit
45
all of them?
projects. Some of
45
those aren't
projects. Yeah, some of them were never, and most of these were never made. So, Well, a couple were made. 3393 in late 2007, Del Toro revealed that he was working on a spiritual sequel to Pan and Devil's Backbone, which would have marked the final installment of fantasy trilogy set during the Spanish Civil War. And I so can't believe I can't think of that guy's name.
It's killing me because I can't think of it.
And I know it too. Anyway,
I know it as well.
At the time, the project was shelved so he could focus on Hellboy 2. However, given how personal Del Toro's Civil War fairy tales are to him, his fascination with stories during conflicts is certainly not worth rolling out quite yet.
Yeah.
That'd be great. So the next one was Alma. It was an DreamWorks animation, was developed an animated feature length based on Rodrigo Blas's short Alma. Blas was reportedly set to direct the movie, and Del Toro serving as executive producer. Never happened. You want me to keep going?
Or do we just pick some?
Okay.
I think the big one that I want to talk about, well, there's several big ones, but...
Is it this one?
Actually, no.
That's the one I want to talk about.
We're going to talk about that one, though. That's one of the ones I want to talk about. I think the big one, and you can see it in actually Hellboy 2, and I think the three of us, I think, if I'm not mistaken, we got really excited about it, is his Hobbit trilogy that he was supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, it was never going to be a trilogy. It was two films.
Oh, it was only going to be two films?
It was only going to be two films
Okay.
when Del Toro was
And
directing.
It was going to be the story of the Hobbit.
The Hobbit, yeah.
And really quick,
And
can
then
I
a
finish
movie
how it
break?
ended up being a trilogy? I actually know.
Go ahead.
Peter Jackson was only going to do two too.
Yeah.
Because for FYI, if you're fans of Tolkien, The Hobbit is like these. It's a really
Compared
thin book
to the other ones.
compared to Lord of the shit that's this wide rings. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I will talk to you about it anytime you want. I'm not Stephen Colbert talking to you in Elvish fan, but I'm pretty good. And The Hobbit's about like this. You could do it all in 1 2.5 hour movie fairly well.
Right.
And if you want to do 1 3 hour epic out of it, it would pretty much encompass it. What do you all think?
No, I completely agree.
I totally agree. So, but they wanted 2 movies. Why did they want more movies? Money. Right?
Right.
And a trilogy is a trilogy. Absolutely. So they were going to do it in 2, and then Peter Jackson shot so much that they ended up doing it in 3, and I'm sure money played into it as well, because they kept shooting and adding to the story. Del Toro was going to do 2. Go ahead.
Well, no.
He was writing it.
Well, the first thing,
he was going to be the director.
He was going to write it, he was going to direct it, and the reason he quit is because he said it was going to take too much time away from his family.
Which he'd already spent a year in New Zealand.
Which he'd already spent a year in New Zealand doing
and
this.
He still got co-writer credit.
He's got co-writer credit. And, the last scenes in Hellboy 2 made it... It was kind of like a preview of what we were going to see when he did The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so excited. We were all three excited.
It was the best choice. If Peter Jackson wasn't going to do it.
And then, of course, when he backed out, they were so far into the project. And if I'm not mistaken, that's why you see more CG in The Hobbit than you did The Lord of the Rings. Because Peter Jackson just didn't have time.
Apparently, he said specifically in the first Hobbit film that there wasn't enough pre-production time for him, not as much as there was on The Lord of the Rings. FYI gives I'll talk about this a little bit more if you don't mind. I'll give you a little bit more light on this in Lord of the Rings too. We can spend a whole episode on Lord of the Rings. A shout out to Rick Mick Garris's post-mortem. They have an interview. He did an interview on there with Bob Shea. Robert Shea ran New Line Cinema. He was one of the last. Him and Harvey Weinstein were the last 2 moguls in Hollywood. Correct.
Yeah.
People who could actually say greenlight that and had creative control to do so.
Shay's still out there, right?
Robert Shea's still alive.
So I know I'm saying though he's not locked up or nothing.
No, Bob Shea didn't rape anybody to my knowledge. And his sister Lynn Shea is a fine character actor.
No, Lynn Shea.
And we could do a whole episode on Lynn Shea,
God.
but we'll talk about that later on, right?
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, Critters 2, Lynn Shea.
Yeah, I know.
So Mick Garris, he talked about it, and he asked him about, him greenlighting it, and he said, well, once again, it was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You need to go back and listen to this, and several other projects. We were the last stop. They got told no by everyone else.
Well, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was actually an independent film. Not a lot of people realize that.
And he wanted to, and he at that time the studio was in. They were looking for product, and he said because the Weinsteins were going to do it for 2 movies. They were going to do Lord of the Rings for 2, and Del Toro was going to do it for them. Did you know that?
Yeah.
So not Del Toro, Peter Jackson. I'm so sorry. Got it there, and he said I would have greenlight 6. If we could have made 6, it's like why are we doing 2? There's 3 books. There's 3. So it makes sense that when later on they do The Hobbit, that they want to do 3 movies, the big trilogy. What could have been, I don't know. Del Toro has said that he left. I think there was creative problems too behind the
sure.
scenes between him. And I'm sure Peter Jackson's a genius, by the way,
Yeah.
or at least a fine filmmaker. He is.
He is, but his last few films have been
the
very
problem
disappointing.
is, what do you do? What do you do?
Yeah.
You made Lord of the Rings. Where do you go?
But do you think?
I think you should have went
granted,
back and did small budget films for the
He
rest
should
of
have
the time.
done small budget films, and granted, I can't believe we're talking about Del Toro. We're doing about Peter Jackson. Yeah, he did King Kong. He did what's the movie?
And an hour and a half of King Kong are amazing. Problem is, the movie's almost 3 hours long.
Yeah, and what's the movie he did about the girl?
The Fleshy Bones. What's it called?
Oh,
It's not Fleshy Bones. It's based on the popular book. It's not a very good movie.
Yeah, where
an hour of that doesn't suck.
Getting to that point, Peter Jackson did those.
Lovely Bones.
And George
Lovely
Lucas,
Bones.
after he did Star Wars, he did Howard the Duck. Pretty bad. Give Peter Jackson credit.
Yeah.
Well, I think that talking about creative differences, do you think it's possible? I mean, because I just don't think people have the same vision.
They don't have the same
No,
vision.
because
and
I'll be honest, if I read a book and then you read a book and you ask me to quote unquote storyboard a scene from it, and you storyboard a scene,
it's going to look different.
It's going to look different.
Even if you're both, and one of them is Del Toro, and the other Peter Jackson. They both are wonderful filmmakers. Both come from low budget roots that you and I, the three, I worship to Peter Jackson. Dead Alive, which is called Brain Dead, and the rest of the world is one of the best zombie films ever made.
Yeah, I agree. And
it is
Peter Jackson. I
alternatingly-
worship Peter Jackson High School. I mean, Meet the Feebles. If you haven't seen Meet the Feebles, check it out.
It probably would be released as NC-17 now if it came out.
Alternatingly, though, and I think the thing that Peter Jackson was able to pull off effectively, and it shows a little bit in the Lord of the Rings trilogy still, but is alternatingly just horrific.
Yeah, there's some.
And then hilarious.
Hilarious. So, we're getting off Del Toro. He made a comment that they were getting to the point where there was going to be some arguments.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it was over Smaug. I always want to call him Smog, but I'm pretty sure it's Smaug. Lots of things like that. There never should have been 3 movies.
No.
I would have loved to have seen what Del Toro have done.
Yeah.
Even if it had been a flawed masterpiece, it probably would have been superior to more of the same.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that? More of the same.
More of the same.
While we're talking about literary adaptions and people like Tolkien, can I bring one up?
Sure.
He was going to do, before Mimic, he was going to do Sand Kings.
Oh, I don't have that on here.
Anybody know anything about Sand
No,
Kings?
no. I was going to talk
Sand
about the
Kings
Winds and the Willows.
Is a Hugo Award-winning short story by this young upstart. Most people don't know him anymore. He's George R.R. Martin.
Never heard of him.
And before Mimic...
Talk about hitting it when you get older.
Yeah.
Before Mimic, he approached George R.R. Martin and said, "Hey, I'd really like to adapt your story Sand Kings." And George R.R. Martin went, "Sure." And the plot to Sand Kings is it's set on this alien world, Bador or something like that. And there's this this guy that collects, and you can see Del Toro directing this. I just picture it in my head, kind of like Chronos, kind of all that creepy background stuff. The guy is a rare animal collector.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately something happens and a lot of his specimen die. So he goes to this shop. And originally, George R.R. Martin's plan was to develop a series of these stories where this shop moves around different universes and realities. But anyway, it's this mysterious shop where they sell creatures. And he's not interested in creatures. And then finally, they say, well, we do have Sand Kings. And Sand Kings are these somewhat insect-like, all of this stuff. And there is the Maw, which is what they call the queen, basically.
Yeah.
And it is everything. And then there's the workers, the drones, basically. The Maw can't move, but the workers, it has telepathic communication. And they adapt to whatever place you put them in. You can see where this is going. He basically buys them all out, and there's 4 breeds of them. There's ones that look orange, there's one that look red, white, and black. And he buys them all.
Red, white, and blue. Duh.
And
how does it go?
Memorial Day weekend as we're shooting this show.
In the home of the
2-for-1 soda.
He puts them all in cages, keeps them separate.
Yes.
And then he finds that if he projects his image into there, that they'll actually start to build these temples that have him built into them because they view him as God. But then he gets bored with them, so he starts to starve them, so they'll fight each other for food. This escalates until finally they start more or less trying to kill each other and all that stuff. And some of them, he makes basically his ex-lover mad. She breaks down the cages.
It sounds convoluted, James.
They get loose, and since they adapt to whatever space they have the entire world.
No.
And they grow.
I need to read this. Is this a short story?
Yes, it's a novella. Yeah.
So this is all the animals are the characters. The Sand Kings are the
Sand Kings are the characters. And basically, the ending of it, basically giving it away is, the people that sold to him come back and say, "We'll take care of this. You just need to run." And he starts bringing people to his house to sacrifice them, so they'll eat them instead of him. And then they basically make him into the Sand Kings start to realize he's the devil. He runs off. They can't find one of the group of Sand Kings. And the last scene is he sees a house in the distance. He thinks he's finally to the escape place. And as he runs up to the house, he realizes that the Sand Kings turn around and it's the Sand Kings, and they've started to look human, and they all have his face.
So it's like Mimic.
And they drag him in to eat him.
That's a
lot.
That could have been. This could have all been solved really quickly with just a crave case. I'm just
What's
saying.
funny about that?
White Castle, send us money.
The reason it ended up falling through is actually
Don't send your burgers.
Hey! 2 of the 3 boneheads love White Castles. I'm sorry you like your crystals, you sick bastard.
You know why this actually didn't happen has nothing to do with Del Toro or George R. R. Martin.
Why?
Before they could actually bring it together, there was this relaunch of a show coming up that they wanted to use it to make the first episode. Sand Kings became the plot of the first episode of the Outer Limits relaunch.
Oh, really?
So that's why that one didn't come together.
Oh.
But can you imagine with the way Del Toro does certain aspects of horror based on a George R. R. Martin story, how we could look back at that now and be like, oh my God.
That's
Sand Kings. Look at it. The story's great, but I never knew it was going to be a Del Toro film.
So, mine is At the Mountains of Madness. Now, that is based on a H.P. Lovecraft book, novella.
Yes. Which, the fact that Del Toro hasn't made
a Lovecraft
movie is a tragedy.
It is one of the more famous ones. It's probably not his best one, but Del Toro, what we've never had. We've had tons of Lovecraft ripoffs. We've had tons of Lovecraft adaptations.
Love letters too, but we have never
had a big budget, faithful Lovecraft adaptation.
No.
Pacific Rim has a lot of Lovecraft.
As some people would argue,
Hellboy has a lot of Lovecraft.
Oh yeah. As some people would say, we have yet to have a balls to the wall.
We've never had a balls to the wall, and it's going to be balls to the wall. Not only was Universal going to back it at $100 million, he got Tom Cruise to star in it and said he would do it.
Which is kind of shocking considering all he wants to do is Mission Impossible and hurt himself and...
Did you?
We'll go.
Based on Lovecraft's story of the same, about a terrifying...
worship L. Ron Hubbard. Too.
Yeah, Antarctic expedition. The project has been stuck in development hell since 2010 due to its demanding cost and Del Toro's insistence on an R rating. Del Toro said that he might be able to make it for PG-13, but it could be R, and that was the sticking point because a $100 million film, even with Tom Cruise in an R, was considered a gamble, even though we just saw it make $500 million more worldwide, and it's just about whether you make a good movie or not a lot of times.
Right.
I would have loved to have saw it. I know he had written a part in for Ron Perlman.
Yep.
And one of the things, though, is...
Because the only 2 casts confirmed for that movie, I believe, were Tom Cruise
and Ron Perlman. Yeah. But at least... but I guess Prometheus has a lot of the same elements of what he was going to do.
Because he was still trying to do Mountains of Madness until Prometheus came out. And then it scrapped it.
And then he scrapped it. It said that they thought... Well, the last thing I read was before Prometheus came out that he thought it had similarities that were awfully close.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've never gotten one. Del Toro's the person to do it. I don't know that we'll ever get it. I'm sure we will eventually. I mean, time, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to do it.
But still, I mean, it's been... And we still haven't got a Lovecraft
We've never
movie.
got a big budget Lovecraft film, and I can't believe that it's never happened.
Yeah. You mentioned it, by the way, making money. One of the projects that came up was Del Toro was going to do it, and Del Toro was going to do Pet Sematary. Do you know the story about Del Toro's Pet Sematary?
No, I didn't know he was going to do either one of those.
He wanted to do them, and here's the funny part about Pet Sematary. It was all together. It got scrapped at the last second. Do you know who wrote the screenplay, though, for what was going to be Del Toro's Pet Sematary?
No.
Matt Greenberg of Halloween H2O fame. I literally would have just loved to have been in that room. Okay, we got Del Toro. Yeah, let's get that Halloween H2O guy. Let's see what he can put together for.
In all fairness, I'm not pissing. H2O is not a good movie, but blaming a bad movie on the screenwriter once again is saying the key grip really screwed this picture up.
But Del Toro said he wanted to do it and Pet Sematary, and at one point there was at least brief mention the studio was thinking about doing a Del Toro King trilogy. Got scrapped.
Yeah, of course.
So there you go.
I didn't know he was going to direct Beauty and the Beast.
That was one that I was going to bring up. Beauty and the Beast, and he backed away from it.
The live action version?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bill Condon's the one who took it over.
Yeah, I know Bill Condon took it over, and God.
I never actually watched it.
It's actually painful.
There's another one, speaking of Disney, things that were Disney films that he got. His Pinocchio. Del Toro's Pinocchio. If you know the full story about that, it was going to be Del Toro directing for Jim Henson Company.
Yep.
Music by Nick Cave.
Wow.
Tom Waits doing the voice of Geppetto. Matthew Robin.
Pinocchio,
I just need a little boy.
Talking to you today.
Matthew Robin.
This Scotch whiskey.
Ooh, Tom Waits' best movie role. Mystery Men.
I was going to say Seven Psychopaths because I'm accurate.
No, Mystery Men.
No, I thought it was...
What about Dracula?
Mystery Men.
As,
Renfield. No, Mystery Men.
Nah. I'm sticking with Seven Psychopaths.
I'm going to come and kill you now.
And drink and smoke. Sorry.
You sound like you've had a bad day.
He's a cross between, by Tom Waits, is almost Louis Armstrong.
Matthew Robbins was collaborating with Del Toro on that. Matthew Robbins worked with him on Mimic, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, which never happened.
Never happened either.
Crimson Peak. But the other part about this was Shadow Machine was going to be the one doing the stop motion for it. Now, Shadow Machine is best known to most people for Robot Chicken, but they've never done anything with a big budget. It was going to be kind of exciting. What killed it? Paranorman, Frankenweenie.
Yep.
When those underperformed, they were like, nobody cares about stop motion anymore, and they killed it.
I would have liked to have seen his Blade 3, too. His Blade 3, he went on to do Hellboy instead, but his Blade 3 would have been post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
And would have been, they find Blade, and basically had been a little like I Am Legend, I think, in the sense of the vampires.
Which he was also attached to at one point.
Yeah, and the vampires had taken over the world, and I think that would have been much better. As we keep going through, what about Dark Universe?
Oh, is this the Justice League?
Justice League.
Also called Justice League Dark.
This is the one, when they announced that, I was just like, oh my God, please do this. Because... Warner Brothers, quit messing up DC Comics.
Well, I didn't realize that Alex Kurtzman and Chris Morgan, who had rebooted the Justice League, or the Dark Universe, because they'd done The Mummy. They did The Mummy, right? And The Mummy, by the way, with Tom Cruise, is not a terrible film. It's not good.
No.
But it's not any worse than the Brendan Fraser ones either.
Yeah.
In fact, it's darker. Did you see it?
I have not seen it.
It's darker. I will give them that. But
I have a hard time watching Tom Cruise.
I like Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Halo.
Another movie that Peter
Jackson was going to produce it, and they wanted Del Toro to direct it. Yeah.
So what happened with that movie?
Well, when that didn't materialize, then they got Neil Blomkamp, who went on to do District 9.
Yeah.
Signed on to direct, and that didn't work out either. They still haven't done it, and there's really not a reason other than I would imagine that it was probably creative control.
And Halo's kind of fizzled out at this point. So.
He was going to direct Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, too.
Because that's another thing that we have yet to see. Well, y'all are going to say Silent Hill, I think, but that's a good video game movie has not happened.
You mentioned Silent Hill. Do you know Del Toro's connection to Silent Hill?
No.
Del Toro was going to do a video game, Silent Hills. It was going to be the 9th game in that series. Del Toro was going to direct, write script, do the entire gameplay storyline with the company. They actually released a trailer. It was in place. Norman Reedus, I think, was one of the voice actors.
Okay, so this was the Norman Reedus Del Toro video game?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know why it fell apart?
No.
Legal troubles. Basically, the company that owned Silent Hill, the creator of Silent Hill, created 2 other huge franchises for him, and I'm blanking on what they are. But he had a falling out when they were working on the last game, and he said, screw it, I'm leaving the company. And as soon as he did that, they're like, we're burying all his projects.
Oh.
And so Del Toro has said, because he's worked on 4 or 5 different video games. There was a video game that was going to be called Insane that he worked on.
Was it In the Membrane?
Hater was another game that he worked
Hater's
on.
on here too.
Insane, got no brain.
He worked on a bunch of these video games, and he recently said in an interview that he said he goes, I love video games. I'm going to have to stop doing it though because I am the albatross of the video game industry. And so, Silent Hills, actually, that was his quote when it finally got completely scrapped. I'm the albatross of the video game industry. Every video game he's been attached to, at least some of these films have been made, but he has never successfully got a game out the gate.
Hellboy 3, we'll never get it.
No, we'll never get it.
And
not Del Toro's.
Not Del Toro's. We're getting one from Neil Marshall that's starring the guy who's a good actor, and Neil Marshall's a great director. Well, is a good director. I enjoy Neil Marshall's work.
Yes.
Dog Soldiers, we've talked about him on here before. Check out Dog Soldiers and The Descent.
And I believe he just directed the very first episode of The Lost in Space.
I think so, too.
Yeah, which is really good.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth watching.
But we'll probably never get it now. They're doing another Hellboy with a totally different actor, totally different director. We'll never get the third one. It's a shame. If worst case scenario, I actually wish he'd just write the book of what he wanted to do because Hellboy's 2 set up for
Hellboy 2 set up.
Or he was involved in the cartoon Hellboys.
Yeah.
You do it
the cartoon. The Sword of Stones or whatever.
Yeah, Fire and Ice, right?
Is that something like that. Yeah. So I Am Legend. James mentioned that one. We did eventually get Richard Matheson's I Am Legend with Will Smith, but not directed by Del Toro.
We do need to talk.
Did you hear about his version of Pacific Rim, his sequel that he wanted to do?
No, I thought he was one of the writers of the Pacific Rim sequel. Is he not?
Well, what's the sequel called?
Uprising.
Because I read a thing, and how accurate this is, I don't know, but that his version was going to be called Pacific Rim Maelstrom. And it was basically the idea that after they beat back the kaiju go back and mechanize. Mm-hmm. And it was going to be our mechs versus them in mech suits.
That's always better. Like Blade 3, that plot.
Yeah.
But we got another crappier plot. Is it? Do you think it's a budget thing? He's out, and they go, well, this would be cheaper.
Well, and that's basically what they said with it was that the first one made money overseas, but not so much in America. And then the studio got really nervous after Crimson Peak. The Crimson Peak broke even, and they were worried that kaiju robots would be way more expensive.
So Mephisto's Bridge. At one point, Del Toro tried to adapt Christopher Fowler's novel Spanky under the title Mephisto's Bridge, which would have been a darkly comedic Faustian tale about a man who sells his soul in exchange for a devilish one.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah, this is another project that's destined to go down in history as one that almost came to be. However, some sort of Del Toro's ideas from this one were repurposed for Hellboy 2. Keep on going. I'm sorry, my iPad's going a little slow. James, you next?
I think we need to talk about, before we run out of time, we do need to talk about the Haunted Mansion.
Well, it's on here. It's just my iPad went.
You want to do the Haunted Mansion? Go ahead, and I'll do the
do you have the reason why the Haunted Mansion wasn't made? Because I don't have that.
Well, it still may be made. My thing went down. So.
Okay, if you're familiar with, Disney has been making movies based on their rides, and the first Haunted Mansion starring Eddie Murphy had nothing to do with.
Well, it was in a mansion that was haunted.
It was in a mansion,
and there was a lady in a ball.
Yeah,
and that's about it.
And it's awful.
Yeah,
it's absolutely.
It's got Terrence Stamp. That's what that movie has going for it. Is Terrence Stamp.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. God, it's awful.
No. But if you just watch the 10 minutes of the film, cut it together with just the Terrence Stamp scene.
You're just wanting to get into the limey, and we're not here to talk about Terrence Stamp.
I think Terrence Stamp. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Terrence Stamp's the best part of the Phantom Menace. Count it.
He didn't do anything.
And that's why he's the best part of the Phantom Menace.
He was just there for somebody to go, ew, it's Zod!
Anyway, But
the Haunted Mansion, Del Toro was going to do his version of the Haunted Mansion. And yeah, Crimson Peak is kind of a haunted house movie, but man, I just wanted to see his version.
The thing is if you know anything about Del Toro, he owns a house called Bleak House. And Bleak House, I have the book, and you can check it out. He did a book of all the art and things that are in Bleak House.
Bleak House comes from a Dickens novel. And it basically stores all of his collectibles he's collected over the years. So he got sick of having to ask permission, so he bought a house and designed it to hold all this stuff. And it's amazing, and it's really cool if you look at pictures of it. He's a huge fan of the Haunted Mansion.
Yes.
He talked about, actually, in the documentary, going back to Mimic, of when he was working on Mimic that he would go to Disneyland just to ride the Haunted Mansion to get away from the Weinsteins and all the things that were going on in the making of specifically in pre-production and post-production.
Yeah.
That it was his way of getting away from it. He just ride the Haunted Mansion.
And that's
over
my
and
favorite
over and
ride
over.
at Disney too.
It's one of my favorite rides as well. And I know a lot of people think it's one of those things. I hate this iPad. One of those things that's probably out of date, but I think it's cool. I think there's a movie there. If they can make a movie out of the Pirates of the Caribbean, that's funny. That's the first Pirates of the Caribbean, folks. First one.
Yeah.
They've made several more. The Haunted Mansion should have been done, but he's a huge Haunted Mansion fan. He owns a lot of the memorabilia, a lot of the original stuff from that. So he is still involved with it, according to, but whether we'll ever see it or whether it'll ever get done, which leads to another Disney project he almost made, The Wind in the Willows. Wind in the Willows is a fantastic book. If you've got kids, I started reading it to my son. I enjoy them quite a bit. The Adventures of Mr. Toad, which is another Disney project. The story behind that is that an executive said, "Can we make Mr. Toad ride a skateboard?" And supposedly Del Toro walked out of the meeting and quit. Because we were never, ever, ever going to be here. And I agree with him. He's right.
I apologize. I think I'm getting this completely wrong. But there wasn't his version going to be like, it wasn't actually going to be animals. It was going to be live people.
I didn't know that.
I could be wrong.
I know the Haunted Mansion, as of last year, he said he's still working on.
Yeah. Well, I'm not getting my hopes up.
There's a couple projects of his that I really want to talk about because I would have loved to see them, and we may still.
Yeah, I'm seeing it on your list, and I'm like, I did not know this.
First, I want to talk about Drood.
What is
now,
Drood?
I mentioned The Mystery of Edwin Drood before. Was Dickens' last novel they never finished. Dan Simmons wrote a book called Drood.
Very silent.
And what it's about is it's about Dickens almost died in a train accident 5 years before he died, and it killed several people. It was big international news. This massive train wreck. Dan Simmons fictionalized that and said basically that when it happened, the survivors started to see someone that called themselves Drood, and it basically was a soul-sucking entity that appeared at these national tragedies and basically took people to the other realm. And
freaking olive oil causing all those damn train wrecks.
And in the book,
and yes, I'm victim blaming. It's not Bluto's fault. It's olive oil. She let it happen.
The book is narrated.
You never know what we're going to talk about victim blaming on this show.
The book is narrated by Wilkie, which if you're familiar with Charles Dickens, it was a somewhat competitor but also friend who had opium issues and all that stuff. But basically he narrates Dickens' decline, saying that it was because he was chasing this ghoul that showed up to these accidents. Del Toro loved it and wanted to adapt it. And it made it so far and then just disappeared. The other one that I have to talk about is Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5.
Now somebody explain to me what Slaughterhouse 5, because I've actually never read it.
I've never read it either.
James?
It is a anti-war, somewhat comedy. It's really, it's Kurt Vonnegut, so it's really weird. But more importantly, you know who was going to write the adaptation of this?
No. Kurt
Charlie Kaufman.
Oh.
And here's why it fell apart.
Charlie Kaufman of Being John Malkovich. Adaptation. God bless.
Charlie Kaufman was attached to do the screenplay for the studio. They wanted Del Toro to direct it, and here's where Del Toro said it fell apart. The studio wouldn't commit to pay for Kaufman, because Kaufman's a very expensive screenwriter, according to the studio system.
Really?
That's what he said. Until Del Toro signed on. Del Toro said, I won't sign on until I see Kaufman's script. I want to make sure I'm the right fit for it. So the studio says, we're not paying Kaufman until you sign on. And so Del Toro went, okay, and walked away. There you go. That's why Slaughterhouse 5, one of Kurt Vonnegut's best, and matter of fact, I would argue, one of the best novels of the 20th century we didn't get adapted by Del Toro. You mentioned Wind in the Willows already. Del Toro was going to do Thor for a while.
Yeah, no, that's true too. He was going to do Thor for a while. Yeah.
We have had an adaptation of this with Rowan Atkinson and Angelica Houston, but Del Toro was going to do The Witches. Which is based on Roald Dahl.
Book.
And Roald Dahl's books have included James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
Never
Matilda,
the BFG,
Fantastic Mr. Fox, the BFG. The only two that really haven't been adapted for major films The Witches was done as a BBC America kind of.
Was Angelica Houston?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From
But
late 80s, early 90s, right?
Yep. The Twits and George's Marvelous Medicine haven't been adapted by any major thing. But The Witches, he was going to do it justice in that if you're familiar with Roald Dahl, actually if you're familiar with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, those are dark stories.
They are
the
dark
BFG
stories.
is a dark story. And to see, and if you know anything about The Witches, if you like Roald Dahl, basically they discover these witches, all the stuff going on, and at the very end of it, a child has to make the choice that the only way they can take him down is he has to be turned into a mouse. And he can't be turned back, which means he'll have the lifespan of a mouse, which is only 9 years. And he comes to terms with it because he finds out that his grandmother, who is his only living relative, is also going to die in 9 years. And so he agrees to take down the witches so he and his grandmother will die at the same time. And Del Toro directing.
Oh, it's a good ending.
I mean, can you see?
But
Del
the
Toro?
movie version has a happier ending, right? Because the whole movie.
I don't
the
remember.
doll was still alive when and he actually disowned it. He was furious
because it was all the boy gets turned into a mouse, and at the end he gets turned back.
and that does not happen in the book. And
I need to
Roald
read the
Dahl
book.
blew up at that and wanted his name removed from it because he goes, "You didn't make The Witches. You made a film that involved witches."
Yeah.
And he was very old at the time, but he was furious.
That's funny.
He said, "None of my stories should have endings where everything is happy. That's not been my life experience, and it's wrong
Well,
to
everything
lie
was-
to children."
Everything was happy into BFG.
No, there's some kids that got eat.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Got eat. They got eat.
And if you know Roald Dahl's history, if
Not
you
eaten.
never.
They got eat.
They got eight.
If you
Eight.
read any of his history, there's a reason he always believed that nobody gets away scot-free. He had a very interesting childhood.
In World War II. He was a spy
Yeah, he was a spy.
But-
for Her Majesty's Secret Service. Correct?
Yeah,
Right?
him and
But
Ian
no,
Fleming
even-
and
Ian Fleming
and there's another author that
But Roald Dahl was known for his prowess
yes,
Even
meaning he got it home.
with
But
lots
even-
of different. Yes, keep going.
even in his
Getting
youth,
information.
though, he had a rough youth. There's a story about a
It's-
schoolmaster just about beat him to death.
A rough
You
two
Utes.
He's going to in 2010. He announced that he would be doing a Van Helsing movie. That never
God, yeah, that never happened.
Left Hand of Darkness. Now, Left Hand of Darkness is not based on the famous Left Hand of Darkness about Ursula K. Le Guin. Have you heard about his Left Hand of Darkness?
What about the right hand of dimness?
That would be you.
The Left Hand of Darkness is a famous Ursula K. Le Guin novel, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, he's adapting Ursula K. Le Guin," who I talked about in the book episode.
Yeah, she was talking about
Yes.
But
Ursula K.
It turned out his version had nothing to do with Ursula K. Le Guin. It was a Western version of Count of Monte Cristo that he himself described as, it's like Wild Wild West meets Videodrome.
It had me a Videodrome.
Do you know why we didn't see that movie?
Because it's Wild Wild West meets Videodrome?
He went to Legendary, and Legendary said, he gave him both scripts, and they said Crimson Peak's a safer bet.
Yeah, he was going to... No, I could get into that.
So, the other one that not a lot of people know about was, and this never got really past the conversation phase, but in 2007, Iron Man made money, and Neil Gaiman and Del Toro had a meeting about doing Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
And the studio actually announced Gaiman and Del Toro developing Doctor Strange, and it never went any further. Champions, which was a movie that he was going to do. I told you I had over 45 of
I know.
these.
Well, there's 45. I don't think we can get through all of them. You wanna
I
hit the
found
highlights?
45 and then found 10 more. Champions was based on a 1960s British TV show about agents, secret agents with powers. That never happened.
That's kind of on the nose.
You want to hit the highlights?
I want to hit heavy metal.
Yeah, I saw with the heavy metal.
Heavy metal.
He was going to do a segment. David Fincher was doing heavy metal,
actually,
right?
more than that. Heavy Metal 2008, it was announced.
Yeah.
It was going to be a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the only one who didn't like heavy metal.
Oh, listen to who all was going to do segments.
It's not
I just
very
don't.
much of his time. I enjoy it.
Listen who all was going to do segments, though. And this was 2008. Zack Snyder,
Yeah, well,
Gore Verbinski,
okay,
Jack Black was going to do his own segment.
that would have been interesting.
Tim Miller, and Fincher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Tim Miller of Deadpool fame, right?
Yeah.
Do you know who killed that one?
Disney.
No. Heavy Metal, the rights to Heavy Metal was bought out by this young upstart who wanted to develop it as a potential show for some El Rey network.
Oh, Robert Rodriguez.
The other one, Lucasfilm did an
Does the
initial...
El Rey network still exist, by the way?
I think so.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
on. Yeah.
Lucasfilm approached him and asked him if he'd be interested in doing a Star
Jabba.
Wars movie, Jabba.
Oh,
He wanted it to make it a Godfather, Scarface of...
Now,
of
what I
Star Wars.
found out was it was not confirmed that
Yeah.
that this actually took place. I don't doubt.
I
that it
read a
didn't.
comment that allegedly came from him. I didn't see a video of him saying it, but where he said that he wanted to actually show that the dark side is not the darkest thing. He wanted to show the true underbelly of this
And
civilization.
if you see Solo has some of that in it.
Yeah,
Um,
but man, Jabba for me is my favorite character in the Star Wars universe.
Really?
Oh God, yeah.
Why?
Well, it's like I told me and James had this conversation before the show. As you two know, and as if you listen to the show, the first Star Wars movie I was
Return of
introduced
the
to
Jedi.
was Return of the Jedi. And who's the first person you see in that? Jabba.
3PO and R2.
Ah, shut up. Jabba. And I'm like, oh my
In
God,
the
this
original
character's...
cut, it would have been Luke building his lightsaber, but it got cut out.
So Jabba was my introduction to Star Wars, and I'm like, it's such a cool character. And then he dies off, and I've always had this obsession with Jabba the Hutt, and I want to know this backstory because he's a giant fat lizard who doesn't do anything. How did he get to become this big criminal?
that
Hutts,
nobody
man.
will touch.
The Hutts.
And the fact that he's impervious to the Force.
I want to run through some of these just because I wanted to see them. Journey to the West was going to be Del Toro's Ming Dynasty Chinese fantasy work.
So he's
Yeah.
Shanghai Noon.
Yeah, but the Monkey King.
Monkey King took it over.
Yeah.
Nutshell Studies.
See, I read all these. I just chose to skip some.
I wanted to get to these because I think it shows exactly what Chad was talking about.
Yeah.
That the Nutshell Studies, which would have been his crime drama show.
And I have a question too. This is my question about this whole episode that we should
Right.
before you go on.
Yeah.
Is it the fact that Del Toro is the one guy who tries to do so many things and they keep getting, or is there other directors who just are not as
All of them. I think.
Or as-
yeah. Joe Dante said in an interview, you get three projects going, and you hope that one of them goes.
But
one of them goes,
what-
and they all have
I
tons.
think-
But it seems
I
like
was
Del
gonna say
Toro
this.
gets more coverage for all the projects
Well,
that
I
he's
was-
Yeah,
going to do.
he is out of all the directors more famous for what he hasn't done.
Well, I was going to say,
Sometimes.
and I was going to
In a
say
sense.
this at the end, but I'll say it now. I think one reason I love Del Toro is he makes these movies, but on top of that, he's also a fan. And I
Yes.
think when he has a
Yes,
chance to
we
do
smell
something,
our own.
I think when he has a chance to do something, he wants to talk about it. Which means, if somebody came up to me going, "Hey James, do you want to make him adapt an Edgar Allan Poe work?" If anybody asked me what's going on, I haven't adapted Poe.
That
I
may
haven't
very
adapted
well
Poe.
be it, because now we talk to people who do this stuff all the time and who have projects, and we'll talk about it before the interview and after the interview, and a lot of times they won't even tell us.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Even off the record, they
Yeah.
won't mention it because they don't want to talk
Or they'll
about
just
it.
say, "I got some things.
I got some things. Yeah, and
But
a lot of times. Go
But
ahead.
Del Toro just gets so much coverage.
But I think it's because he talks about it.
And
Yeah.
we did, and I think a lot of people love him because he's a fan.
Yeah, and I mean, because there was and the other thing is the movies that get made, they just come out of left field because I remember, if I
Crimson Peak
remember
came out
right,
left
you hear
field
you hear
for me.
Frankenstein, Haunted Mansion,
Yeah.
Mountains of Madness, and then all of a sudden you get he's making Crimson Peak. What the hell's Crimson Peak?
Or The Shape of Water.
Or The Shape of Water.
came out of left field too.
Very
I don't-
successfully out of left
And as of
field,
right
but-
now, he's not supposedly making any more movies. He's for a
Really?
while.
Did he say that?
He's taking a break.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, he's taking a break. He's and he's producing a horror anthology series for Netflix.
Yep, that's something. That
And he also produces Troll Hunters, and he also produces The Strain, and he also wrote the books for The Strain with Chuck Hogan. We could go on to this
But anyway,
really
James,
quick.
go
Let's
ahead.
wrap this up.
Runoff is based on a graphic novel by Tom Manning, but it's about a creepy old town that once you enter, you can't leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just see him having fun with that. I would love to see that. This one, did you hear about this one, Joe? He considered it the unofficial end of the trilogy of The Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth.
Is that the one I talked about earlier?
No, Saturn and the End of Days. It's about the apocalypse has already happened. It's about a young boy who survived the apocalypse and then just has to survive. And that's the entire movie.
I'd
is
like to see that.
seeing him survive. Silver. Have you heard of Silver?
I read about it.
I've heard of
He
Sliver.
announced it in fall of 2017, so this potentially is still happening. He wants to make it a black and white film about Mexican wrestlers who have to fight vampire politicians. And that sounds ludicrous to us.
But he
if you're
also made a
familiar-
movie with, well, actually for Luchador films, that's
If
not
you're familiar
unusual.
with luchador films,
Yeah, it's
those
not-
go back to the 1930s, 40s,
And they
50s.
always fought vampires and
Yeah.
monsters, and it was
Monsters
always
and
wrestlers
demons.
who did them, and they were, you know, with the
Here's
masks,
the
right?
one.
Yes.
Here's the one.
It plays in The Strain quite a bit, actually. One of the main characters is an ex.
Oh,
Mexican-
Luchador?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, who
All
fought wrestlers.
There's-
and who fought vampires. It plays even more in the show.
There's
Huh.
You should
there's
watch the show.
3 more that I want to run through really quick. But this one I
hold you to
wanted
it.
to see so badly after I read about it. Like, I actually got upset.
Why
when
do
I
you
read
start with
this.
your thumb? You're supposed to start with this finger.
Because I'm German.
Grant Morrison? And Chad, Grant Morrison is?
Comic book writer. He has wrote several. He did. Oh man, you're catching me on the spot.
He was the original cast of Saturday Night Live.
He wrote the story arc that led up to the death of Batman.
There you go. So he's a huge comic book writer. He's created all these great characters.
Batman ain't dead.
Nope, he just got displaced in time.
He wrote a story for Del Toro called Sleepless Nights. The plot to Sleepless Nights is
Tom Hanks is a widower.
a world gets caught to where it gets caught in a loop where every day is Halloween repeating, which means that the shield between the paranormal and our reality is so weak, monsters start going in between, and since it's stuck during that day, they keep coming over. And Del Toro read it and said, I want to make this, it's Groundhog Day with monsters.
Yeah,
That's exactly what it is.
And I was like,
I'm assuming the villain would be Sam Hain. Just
from
call-
Ghostbusters. That's Sam Hain.
The killing of
Specifically.
No, supernatural Sam Hain.
the killing of Carnival Row is happening now without Del Toro, but the plot it's in a neo-Victorian city where mythical creatures have been relocated because war has started to destroy their natural habitat. So they create this city to create basically a ghetto for griffins and all these metaphorical, mythological creatures that actually exist and we're hiding. Del Toro isn't involved anymore, but Amazon bought the rights to it,
Okay.
and we'll get 8 episodes of that.
And there's just a normal guy named Griffin, and is like, no, not that Griffin.
Griffin Dune.
It's Peter Griffin. The list of 7.
Is this your last one?
Yes. Other than mentioning that he was supposed to do The Watchmen,
Yeah.
and he said it was too big. Nobody
Too
could
big.
do that.
Yeah.
But the list of 7, I wanted
And yet
to
they're
see
doing a TV series without the Watchmen.
because it was a horror story where they had to get the only 2 humans that could solve these mysteries. Well, 2 of a team of humans that could solve the mystery was Arthur Conan Doyle and Bram Stoker, and they had to investigate all these paranormal.
It's pronounced Bram.
That's,
Bram Stoker.
Out of all of them, that and the Mountains Madness are the 2 I'd really like to see.
I literally Sleepless Nights. I was like, oh, just for the visuals, he would have brought.
It's
to
just
that.
a world. It's just a world where all the water's been replaced with coffee.
Wrapping this up, Del Toro is famous. Well, he's not more famous. That's really not giving him credit, but he is very famous for the projects that he didn't do.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
And we have some wonderful.
it's the only case of a director where I can say that's true.
We didn't even get to the stuff he produced, like
Yeah.
The Orphanage, Mama. Mama, by the way, is a bloody brilliant fairy tale that I loved. And the director went on to do the new It.
Yeah.
Well, I was about to say, and that's what, and I said that earlier. He brings all these talents around him.
Yeah.
And like I said it earlier, but I do think the reason I do gravitate to Del Toro, like you said as well, is he's a fan. Like, I look at what he wanted to make. It's stuff by comic book writers.
He's passionate.
And classic novels and new novels that play on all these tropes.
And he's never made a movie that isn't good.
Or interesting.
Or interesting. They're all good.
All flawed. And even the ones that we were crapping on, they're not bad movies.
They're
just flawed.
They're just flawed, but still they're entertaining.
They're
They will keep you
entertaining.
entertained.
Absolutely.
Like I felt like I was crapping on Crimson Peak. I love Crimson Peak.
Oh, bold statement. I really liked it.
I loved it. The visuals got me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the visuals are the.
And actually, I loved the mother.
So, yeah.
Because I knew from the beginning, I guess that's part of the predictability, but I knew from the beginning, I'm like, no, that's good. That's a good character.
All right. Thank you all so much. Please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. If you're looking at YouTube right now, it's in the right-hand corner. I got it right that time.
Yeah.
And Del Toro, if you're still watching this, or if you watch this at all,
Come on the show, brother. We'd love to talk to you.
Or sue the hell out of us. That would
in
be
which
great.
case, we get some notoriety. We don't have anything. Try taking blood from that turnip.
Yeah.
He wanted
Bonehead LLC owns this
this
soda.
Diet
about-
Cherry Pepsi that he's about to finish off that was Chad's. Thank you all so much. Tune in next week. We'll see you later. Bye. Welcome to Bonehead. My name's
Irrelevant.
we're just phoning it in now.